This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from Editor and Publisher Magazine, the authoritative voice of news media since 1884, serving newspapers, broadcast, digital, and all forms of news publishing.
And greetings once again, Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. If you are listening to this program on a podcast channel, please follow us. Watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button below, hit the bell to the right. You'll get an update each and every time we upload a new episode of E&P Reports. We've got old friends on new on this episode of E&P Reports. I like to call the screen, if you're watching us, a Brady Bunch view, because I'm joined with 5 industry professionals. First of all, with his 6th appearance on the show, Dr. Ken, no jacket for you, but welcome back to E&P Reports.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you here. Imtiaz Patel, CEO of Baltimore Banner, your 3rd appearance. Thank you for coming back and joining us. You have an interesting story you've been telling, and we'll be interviewing more of your team as the year goes on. Now, we also have an old friend with us as well, Larry Reichman. I'm saying that correctly, sir? Is that correct?
Rickman, you're close.
Rickman, the Colorado Sun. This is your 2nd appearance. No jacket, no mug, nothing else, but we're glad to have you back. We also have Eric Barnes. Eric, you're with, of course, the Daily Memphian. This is your 2nd appearance on the program. See how I keep track of all this. So the newest member, what do they call it? The plebe or the freshman will be our new friend here, David Summers. David, the Long Beach Post, correct?
Yep. No jackets here either. We don't believe them in Southern California.
Yeah, CEO and publisher. The only thing you guys do differently down there is you don't say interstate, you say I, correct? It's like the I.
It's the 405, the 710. We take our freeways very seriously.
You do, you call them does. We're going to be talking about their individual commitments to journalism, these gentlemen and their publications. More importantly, a brand new organization they have formed in tandem called the Alliance for Sustainable Local News. And we're going to pack that all together and unpack it for you right after this message.
This episode of E&P Reports is exclusively sponsored by Blocks Digital, formerly Town News. Even though the name has changed, their commitment to the media industry is as strong as ever. Blocks Digital is now even better positioned to deliver integrated solutions like content management, audience development, advertising revenue, video management, and more. Join the over 2,000 news publishers worldwide that power their ongoing digital transformation with Blocks Digital, serving over 141 million monthly users who view over 6.5 billion pages of content each year. You can trust Blocks Digital to empower you, to connect you at scale with the community you need to reach. Blocks Digital, formerly Town News, now reimagined to help meet the news publishing challenges of tomorrow and beyond. Learn more at blocksdigital.com.
All right, Ken, I'm going to start with you because this seems like something you would do. Maybe I'm wrong. Was the Alliance for Sustainable Local News your brainchild? I'm just making this up as I go because you sent out the press release. So did you think this thing up and lasso the other guys in, or did this start as a group together?
No, I had one of my core competencies is press releases. I found that out later in life. It actually started back, I think, probably spring, summer 2021, deep in COVID. Larry and I were talking. I had met Larry, David, I think a little, Eric a little, not yet Imtiaz, and also Seamus Toomey from Block Club, who can't be on this vodcast. We had informally shared some information. Larry and I talked about if we could get people together, and this was, I think, in October 2021. We met in Denver in the Colorado Sun offices, and it was remarkable of bringing together a group of people. First of all, just for fellowship in COVID. COVID was briefly down. We could actually talk around the table a little warily in terms of distance, but best practices, benchmarks, and also, I remember writing at that point about the 3 a.m. club of being a CEO of one of these organizations is hard. And it was very good for us to get together. We've kept in touch since that time. And then we just met in Santa Cruz about 3 weeks ago now and formalized the Alliance for Sustainable Local News. And we can obviously talk about that and bring together these 6 organizations, and we may be looking for more over this year.
All right, so let me, quoting from the presser that you sent us, the Alliance for Sustainable Local News, or you call it ASLN. Do I have that correct?
Yeah.
You have okay, great. There's an initialism for you. What unites you, or you say what unites us, is our mission-driven reason for publishing. The scale of our enterprise is sufficient to become primary news sources in our community, and our aim to create a sustainable and growing local news institution based largely on earned revenue, not philanthropy. So there's your first distinction, correct? Secondly, you are, correct me if I'm wrong, all disruptors in a way, because no one on this broadcast is currently using a legacy brand for their startup or their news operation. So if someone wanted to join, would that be the 2 criteria? Let me throw it over now to Larry, because Colorado Sun, located in Denver, Colorado. Larry, are those the 2 distinctions that makes the 6 of you all want to work together?
Well, I mean, the legacy part isn't so important to me. Really, it's our commitment to serving our communities, and the fact that, I mean, look, we all have different tax structures. Some of us are nonprofit, some of us are public benefit corporation, et cetera. You know, that's something that we don't have in common. But what we do have in common is a great commitment to serving our communities, quality journalism, and again, relying primarily on earned revenue. I mean, look, we all love philanthropy. If people want to send us grants, I'm all ears. But that's not the core part of our business models.
Okay, so it doesn't matter how you're doing the books. What matters here is you're going to earn the living, right? You're just not going to beg for money. You're going to go out and either get it through reader revenue, some form of marketing or advertising, or some way that you're going to generate revenue within whatever structure you are. Now, Imtiaz, you impressed the heck out of me when we had you on that panel in Harrisburg last year. We had a little TED Talk group of about 100 in front of us. And you said these words, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure you said it differently, but you said, I broke the mold recently. I said, what mold? You said the nonprofit mold. In other words, you are nonprofit. And you said, I fired someone. You let someone go, and then one of your team members came up to you and said, you can't do that. We're nonprofit. Nonprofits don't fire people. What?
You didn't tell. I didn't hear that story. That's a funny story. Sorry.
I'm not lying. Am I MTS? But you basically said.
It's so true.
Sorry.
Everyone freaked out in the organization because I fired an executive, and he was well liked, and people like, what does that mean? We don't do that here. We're a nonprofit, and people thought the commercial requirements of running a business don't apply in a nonprofit world, which is so far from the truth.
Your background was all making money. I mean, you advised the New York Times. You were one of those people that were looking at P&Ls from the start, and now here you are in charge of this nonprofit growing enterprise in a major metropolitan area, treating it like a real business, right? I mean, you get up every morning saying, I'm going to make money. I'm going to make money. I'm going to, just not in a for-profit mode, correct?
That's right. We have no returns to pay to any shareholders. Our return essentially is the community we serve. So if we make money, we can have a larger newsroom at the end of the day. And that's the goal, as large a newsroom as we need to serve the community. But we have to make money at the end of the day. Nonprofit is just like, as far as I'm concerned, it's meaningless, right? It's a tax status. We are here to make money. We need to support ourselves long-term, because I also believe there's not enough philanthropy dollars or donations out there that can sustain an operation of the scale that is required at the end of the day to serve communities properly, right? If we want it to be a purely philanthropically supported organization, I think we could sustain a newsroom of 20 people long-term, 20, 25. Our goal is to have a newsroom of over 100 people. I have 65 in the newsroom right now, because we believe we can drive revenue through other sources and subscriptions, ad sales, adjacent products, all sorts of things. And yes, and a little bit of, roughly 10% coming from donations. But we really have to think like a commercial operation if we are going to succeed long term. And the plan is to succeed long term.
This is fascinating. This is why you guys are together, because if you analyze all of your backgrounds, you are different. If you analyze your journeys into the organizations you now run, they're different. And how you wound up in this position and how you do your tax statics, as we discussed before, is different. I would say the closest to Imtiaz as far as background on this, and I could be wrong, is Eric. Eric, you were CEO of a major media outlet for almost 20 years, right? So you were P&L all the way.
Yeah.
You're not this.
Well,
go ahead.
Major. That's nice. That's great. To call it major. It wasn't New York Times, Wall Street Journal major. Let's say that. But I've always been in for-profit media in one way or another, local news primarily. And honestly, we looked at Daily Memphian when we formed in May of 2018 and said, we really wanted to be a for-profit. We just couldn't make it work in the sense of what I think we all share is this sense that we approach what we do with scale, as Imtiaz was saying. We need, and I think everybody has said, it's scale. We have 40 people in the newsroom now and another 15 on the business side. That's in Memphis, that scale of a newsroom is not rational from a for-profit point of view. It's just not. We can get to the point where we think we'll be sustainable based on subscriptions, advertising, sponsorships, and maybe a corner of philanthropy for certain things that bluntly just don't pay for themselves, but that are important and necessary to do. But we're not going to get to the point where we could, we've raised, I think, $12 million, or actually about $13 million so far in philanthropy and a little more than that in earned revenue. We can't do a reasonable return on investment on that $13 million we raised, but we have made a civic return on investment. I mean, not to be coy, but we just have in the 4+ years that we've been around. And I think that kind of math is what Imtiaz is talking about. I mean, it's a tax status, but it's also a promise to the investors that's very different than saying, hey, this is a smart place to invest your money. I mean, if you want a smart place to invest your money, it's not with us, but it is a really good, it's just not, but it is a really good civic investment. And they'll shut up. And yet the contradiction that kind of gets people thrown off is, like Imtiaz said, we wake up every day focused on subscriptions, advertising, earned revenue. I would say half our readers don't even know we're a nonprofit. When we launched, we didn't lie about it, but we didn't play it up because we wanted people to think of us as more of a for-profit kind of mission-driven, but for-profit entity.
Okay, so again, you and Imtiaz came from the business side, like me. I mean, I came from radio and TV. Nobody in radio and TV ever got to the big chair unless they came from sales. They did not come from the newsroom, trust me. But when I entered this industry obliquely to start one of the first online divisions, I found it fascinating how many editors were in the big chair. Do you see? And not that that's bad, or circulation people who didn't understand the street and making money. So I found it fascinating. That's when I think when we analyze some of the challenges in the industry, I think it's one of them, but I don't want to go down that road. Now I want to focus on the Long Beach Post. David, because we're discussing backgrounds first. You do not come from that side. You were an HR director at a hospital. See, I stalked you. I hope you don't mind, sir, but it was there in your LinkedIn profile. And then you ran PR for Los Angeles County. What the heck are you doing in this industry?
Well, I started, my background is in journalism. And 20 years ago, when I was 19 years old, I was in editor and publisher. I was one of the youngest journalists ever held in contempt of court for invoking my shield law rights. At 19 years old, I was in contempt for 6 months as the editor of this daily newspaper at Sacramento State. And so even though I spent a few years at NBC News after college and moved out of journalism, to find my way back into this industry in 2018, sort of at that same moment of all of us, there was a civic conversation as Alden was here in our community and just had eviscerated our legacy daily print newspaper, that there were philanthropists that were looking at the state of journalism as a civic institution. And there was an opportunity to say, we want to do something about this. We made an attempt to buy the Long Beach Press-Telegram that didn't go anywhere. So we went in a different direction. And I think the great benefit was my journalism education in college was basic news reporting. There was one, org chart of there's a publisher and you're never going to talk to them. And there was no business education about the business of news. And
No.
by coming up through the PR and the business side and working in Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 200 healthcare companies, and having that well-rounded experience in finance and operations and HR, bringing that in, we really have built an organization, and very similar to all of us, of no matter our status, and we all have different, we're different structured, but we're all very entrepreneurial in our work. And that sort of historic division between, well, you never kind of cross over advertising and editorial. The difference is we've changed the conversation, and it's similar to all of us, is that everyone in our newsroom knows that we are ultimately a business, and that we have to be sustainable in order to continue to grow and serve our community. And well, the newsroom doesn't get into the ins and outs of how we make the money. They understand what we do in order to do what we do. And I think that there's a similarity in all of that, and how Imtiaz has their newsroom physically structured, how Ken communicates to his staff, how all of us talk internally, and how that employee culture, that organizational culture, really is a shift from that historic experience that I've had in my journalism career about the division between the two. Is everyone has to understand that if we aren't with no mission, no margin, but no margin, no mission.
Ooh, pull quote. That's great. May I steal that?
Yes.
That's
My guest.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's popular. Okay, so look, Ken, I'm going to edit the great Ken Doctor, a man who I once had to follow on a stage years ago. Ken? Where was that? Europe or somewhere? I mean, and you are just
Vorarlberg, Austria.
That's at Vorarlberg. We were in Austria. Whatever, Ken. You said we're a group of fast-growing, this is in the presser, digital-only local news organizations. Wait a second. Let me circle you back, Ken, to the Colorado Sun. What happened here, Larry? Didn't you pick up Jerry Healy's weeklies? Aren't you running those suckers right now, or did you shut them down?
Oh no, they're still alive and well, and that's all good. We are co-owners of 24 community newspapers. Look, I mean, we launched the Colorado Sun in 2018 as a digital-only news organization. We did not set out to own print or to be in print, but look, it's no surprise to any of us on here that print is suffering, and these papers, frankly, were poised to fall into the hands of a hedge fund. And we stepped up to serve our state and serve our community to take on those papers. But yeah, so I mean, we are co-owners along with the National Trust for Local News of those 24 papers, but the Sun itself is digital only.
I just want to add to what Larry said about that. So we are digital only largely, and as Larry described the nuance in Colorado. The main thing here is about being digital first and digital centric. It is the print costs are just incredible. I wrote a piece for Neiman Reports about this Sunnylands meeting and where funding is going nationally. And I made a point, and partly came out of what Eric was telling me about Tennessee, that there are many print papers, especially large weeklies, small dailies, largely owned by families or very small chains, that are hugely important to their community. So we are not anti-print. We are saying to build new, non-partisan, trustworthy, large news organizations in our cities. Digital-centric makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised to see print analogs from these companies, niche kinds of things over time. We're going to see combinations of Sunday print and digital in some markets. So it's not anti-print at all. The only question here is, how do we pay journalists to do the jobs of local journalism? And that's what we're focused on. And that's why you see all of this talk about earned revenue. We believe that we need to have a lot of journalists, and we believe that the talk at these conferences, and I just came back from one, and Eric and Imtiaz and I are going to another in 10 days, should not be focused on oh my God, what is the model? How can we figure out a model? But the talk should be focused on execution, on how we are actually building stuff. And that's what you see on our Hollywood Squares here, that's what we're focused on. In addition to camaraderie and good food when we get together, is how do we sell more advertising? How do we get more memberships? And yes, how do we do better journalism?
I got to be honest. I challenged you, if you remember. The reason you were on the show so long is you teased this industry. I mean, so many times, because you kept saying, I'm building a new model, not going to tell you what it is yet. Remember those days when we're all guessing and everybody's buzzing about Ken Doctor? Then you announced the buffet. I forgot who called it the buffet, where you're pulling the best.
John Davidow. John Davidow, yes.
And then I got on your case because you did not decide to buffet it or put the buffet in a legacy media company. And at the time that I interviewed you and Jed, who was with you, you both said these words. You said it was the culture. We didn't want to be part of that culture. We wanted to start anew. Now let's swing the. I'm not fighting you on that, but Imtiaz, you wanted a legacy brand first. You fought hard, did you not? With when you were building the banner out, you were working with Stuart Bainham and trying desperately to take over Tribune. You were okay with that culture, just fixing it. Am I right?
We were okay with the business. The culture would have had to be changed. I think the reality is the culture in most news organizations does need, how should I put it, upgrading. It needs to be more performance driven. It needs to be better focused on serving the needs of the communities, the readers, advertisers, business partners, right? And I think a lot of local news organizations have kind of lost sight of that. So yeah, the culture would have had to be changed. It would have been harder to change the culture because now we have no culture here, so we're building it from scratch, and it's great. And that would have involved a lot of different things. Like some people would have had to exit who didn't fit or could adapt as well. So that would have been a different challenge, but at least it had a revenue base to start with.
Yeah. Can I say too, my co-founder and friend and board chair, he and a group tried to buy the Memphis Commercial Appeal. It was a Scripps paper that went to combine with Media General, then Gannett, then Gatehouse Gannett. And his joke, if I channel my inner Andy, is that they tried a few years before we launched Daily Memphian, and he's so glad that they failed to get it because, in hindsight, all that culture stuff, all that legacy print, challenges. Instead, we took a lot of people from the Commercial Appeal in terms of the journalists, but there was almost kind of a baptism of coming over that you left not all your baggage behind, but a lot of baggage. If you were willing to take that risk, come to a digital first startup that had, a bunch of money in the bank, but it was risky. It was scary. That sort of cleaned up some of that culture stuff. And we brought people from other publications, my old publication, all that. But
not all of them. You didn't bring everybody.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And people knocking on your door, you were not going to take. Am I right?
Yeah, we had some people that we didn't take that we should have, and so on. But I think it is interesting to me that I'd forgotten that we did that because I wasn't directly a part of those talks. But there was a sense of, hey, we can save this paper. We can save this paper. We'll take the Commercial Appeal. We'll stop the bleeding. And we'll make it work for the community again. And again, we were really happy we didn't. And I think Andy, when he talked to Stuart Bynum, said the same thing, that in the end, I think you'll be happy you didn't get the banner because, and whether right or wrong, but just because you do leave behind a lot of stuff that you don't want in your news organization.
Imtiaz, are you and Stuart now going, thank God we didn't get Tribune? I mean, the Baltimore Sun, and I mean, are you going to taking that side? Are you happier in the chair you have now than the chair you would have had running the Sun?
It's the pluses and minuses, right? I would have started with a significant revenue base and a subscriber base, right? But I would have to turn the tanker, which was going to be hard. I would have had to, reality is figure out how to transition out of print or really scale it down, right? And that means fundamental changes in the staffing and people. So there's a lot of other challenges. Some days I sit here, I'm really happy we didn't do it. Some days I'm looking at how am I going to make money, and I'm like, ooh, that 100 million or so in revenue would have been fantastic to play with right now. So it's pluses and minuses. I think longer term, look, the reality basically is, I think we're all here because we want to serve the communities and make sure that there is a strong news product that serves the communities. And whichever way gets us there the best is the best answer.
Mike, I think what you see here, I mean, excuse me, is the collection of us. I mean, there's not a one size fits all, right?
No.
I mean, every community is different. Frankly, on the day that I announced the creation of the Colorado Sun, somebody asked us, are you going to print a paper? And I said, look, we'll be whatever Colorado needs us to be. If it makes sense for us to print a paper, we will print a paper. So again, to me, nonprofit, for-profit, public benefit, the tax status is less interesting to me than what Imtiaz was just talking about. It's serving our communities, robust journalism, being at scale, having impact in our communities. That's what this is about. That's what this group cares about, and that's what unites us.
And the Alliance for Sustainable Local News, ASLN, a brand new organization, or just a bunch of guys that get together at 3 o'clock and chat, depending on the time zone. It could be 6 a.m. Baltimore Banner's Imtiaz Patel, CEO, thank you for your valuable time. Colorado Sun's Larry Rickman, editor and president. From the Daily Memphian, Eric Barnes, CEO. From the Long Beach Post, a new friend on the show, David Summers, CEO and publisher. And finally, Ken, we're getting sick of you on this program. Ken Doctor, CEO of Lookout Local, Lookout Santa Cruz. Thank you, gentlemen, for your valuable time. Please keep in touch with us.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.